Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Our feelings are always hard to control. We are humans after all. Sometimes we do things we can't explain, just because we feel that way. I had a student named Daniel, a sweet and innocent child. I was prepared to do anything for him, but don't judge me just yet. First, let me tell you my story. My name is Jolene. I'm a 21-year-old math teacher at a primary school. I live with my sister and my mother. My house was next to the school where I work. I love teaching, and I like teaching the students in creative ways. They loved me, and I loved them. Daniel was a special student, though. Our story began at the start of the new year. It was the first day of school. I missed all my students over the summer break. I missed them so much that I stood by the door to welcome them back. Before I started my first lesson, Mr. Smith, the student affairs officer, knocked on the class door, with Daniel hiding behind his back. Mr. Smith greeted the class and asked them to greet Daniel, but Daniel was too shy and didn't move. So I went over to him to take him by the hand, but he pulled his hand away, which embarrassed Mr. Smith. I asked him to greet his classmates, so he went and he stood in front of the class and he said, "Hello, I am Daniel." Then he went and he sat at the very back of the class. He didn't talk much with the other kids. He didn't like to interact with anyone. Daniel always looked sad, and I thought to myself, he's only 8. What could possibly have made him that way? I tried to get close to him, but he resisted all my efforts. Sometimes he looked like he was hiding some big secret, and later on, I learned what it was. One night, when I was surfing the social media, I came across a horrible news story about a jealous husband killing his wife and another man right in front of his son. The child had been none other than my new student Daniel. Reading that sad story, I started understanding why Daniel was acting that way. I decided to try brightening his life a little. Every day, I would buy a small present and put it on his desk. At first, it had no effect, but slowly he came to love that. During break time, I would sit beside him and we would share food together. I would get him involved in class activities. On his birthday, I arranged a surprise party with his class, his grandmother, and myself. He was so happy that day. After the party, he hugged me and he told me that he loved me. I hugged him tightly. He was not just a student to me. I treated him like he was my own son. He told me that he wanted to call me mother, and that made me so happy. After his grandmother died, he came to live with me. We faced a lot of problems together, but I followed his success in life with pride. Daniel is all grown up now. He's graduating from the Faculty of Engineering. I am so proud of what he has made of himself.
Hello, my name is Andrew and I'm 17 years old. Playing tennis has been my great passion since I was a kid. Focus, stamina, and fast reaction times are key requirements of this game. I began playing tennis in primary school and on my way to the top, I have faced some strong players, some of whom were older than me, but I beat them nevertheless. As I grew up and became more proficient, my ambition grew stronger too. My desired dream was to win the Grand Slam Championship and revel in the applause and cheering. I entered the national championship and reached the final match, which was to be played against a strong player. If he were to win the match, his next step would be the Olympics, so I intended to beat him at any cost. The problem was that he was more skilled than me. Fortunately, I believe that the end justifies the means, so I made a deal with one of his training crew members to put an anesthetic in his water bottle. As they say, money talks and makes all things possible. I'm not evil, I'm just pursuing my dreams by the most direct route possible. In the first half of the match, his powerful smashes allowed him to dominate the game. It was a pretty one-sided match. During the break, however, he drank some of the drugged water and suddenly felt very fatigued. The referee noticed his fatigue and asked him if he wanted to forfeit the game, but he refused. Needless to say, I dominated the second half of the match and won rather easily, to everyone's amazement. I was later nominated for the world title. I won many easy matches in the beginning, but in the semifinals, I was matched with a player who was even stronger than the one I had beaten in the national championship. Once again, I put my devious scheme in motion and bribed one of his crew members with a hefty sum of money. Once again, I was the disadvantaged player in the first half of the match. Then during the break, my opponent drank the drugged water from his bottle. As expected, I dominated the second half of the match. Just as I had taken the lead in the match, the referee stopped the game and directed 2 security guards to arrest me. Some security cameras had recorded the bribed individual drugging my rival's water bottle. The authorities had confronted my partner in crime, and he had confessed and turned me in. Consequently, I was disqualified from the match. As they say in sports, you win some, you lose some.
My name is Jerry. I am the village dreamer who touched the poor suffering and pain. In my country, illness is a monster that eats its victim's soul without mercy. I decided to be the soul saver, or the savior of souls. Heroes in my country don't wear superhero costumes. Rather, they wear white lab coats with stethoscopes hanging around their necks. I knew how difficult it was to become a doctor, but I was up for the challenge, so I enrolled in a medical college. The studies were challenging, but my creed in life is this: an opportunity may only come around once. You must take it or leave it. After graduation, I was hired to work in a government hospital in my village. Unfortunately, I discovered early on that my knowledge level wasn't broad enough, so I traveled to England to expand my knowledge base. I wanted to take advantage of the experience of the professional doctors there, so I attended difficult surgeries and observed and studied them intently. My mind was like a sponge, absorbing vast amounts of empirical data. Even so, I still wasn't satisfied with my knowledge level, so I traveled to the USA. When I arrived in Chicago, I felt like a thirsty man who had an oasis in the desert. I encountered advanced technologies, modern, new medical equipment, leading-edge ways of treating heart disease, serious heart disease cases, and fantastic anecdotal stories from famous doctors about their most unusual cases. I dreamed of being a great doctor like them, and my opportunity came when a baby girl was diagnosed with a serious heart illness. She was not expected to live long, so I volunteered to perform some risky surgery on her. All the doctors around me thought I was crazy, but I knew that I could do it. After 5 hours of arduous concentration, focus, stress, and sweating under the operating room lamps, the surgery concluded successfully. I had proven myself to be a great doctor after all. Afterwards and subsequent surgeries, I became known as the guardian angel who saved souls. I gathered a huge following due to my successes. I was surprised when my surgery techniques later became required studies in my country. I became a role model for many aspiring medical students. I returned home to thank my country by building a heart hospital that treated people for free. Many people donated to my cause. My hospital saved many souls, but this is a never-ending mission. My country bestowed upon me the honorable title of the Prince of Hearts. Will you donate to my cause?
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 23 years old, and I teach art. I recently got married to the love of my life, Norman. I considered him my friend, my brother, my son, and my husband. We loved to prank each other, even after we got married. For instance, one time, I turned off all the lights in the apartment, dressed up as a monster, and scared the living daylights out of him when he came back from the store. Another time, he damaged my car. I put mayonnaise on his toast. I did worry sometimes that our jokes might go too far. I mean, he did get really mad at me once. He stopped talking to me for 2 days, even though I apologized profusely many times. After that, our pranks sort of stopped. I figured our pranking days were over. About a month later, I returned home to find a letter on the floor. I opened it and read it. If you don't pay us 100,000 by Friday, we will kill Norman. I smiled. Norman was pranking me again. When he returned home, I hugged him and showed him his prank letter. He read it carefully, and his brow furrowed. He appeared seriously frightened and swore that this was not part of any prank. He told me that we needed to leave town as soon as possible. I asked him why, and he told me that before he married me, he had stolen a gold statue from a motorcycle gang. I asked him why he couldn't just return it with an apology, and he told me that the statue was worth a lot of money and could make us really wealthy. That night, an armed masked burglar broke into our apartment and confronted us with a gun. He said to Norman, "Hello, Norman. Long time no see. You need to choose between the statue or your wife. Choose now." Norman was hesitant. Then he steadfastly said, "I can't give up the statue. Take my wife." The masked man turned towards me. He pointed the gun at me in a threatening manner. I was frantic. I was staring at Norman in shock. Suddenly, the masked man ripped off his mask. It was Keanu, Norman's brother. Norman sat down, laughing so hard he could hardly stop to breathe. Between laughs, he said, "This is payback for the last prank of yours. I was so mad at him that day, but it's all right. He doesn't know what I have planned for him." Friendship is not a word that is easily described. In fact, those who know the true meaning of it are scarce. It usually comes with a bond of trust that is not easily broken. The question is, can you believe in that bond till the very end, no matter what? My name is Sophie. I'm 21 years old. I used to live with my parents and my two siblings, Lena and Brian. Dad's an architect. Mom's a doctor. But she had to leave her job to take care of Brian and Lena because they were young and still needed her care and attention. And for a long time, so did I. As a kid, my parents were always worried about me. I didn't have any friends at school, and I was very shy. I would immediately cry when something happened, but all that changed when I met my guardian angel, Matilda. The way we met was somewhat bizarre. I did pretty well in my studies at school. I had hobbies like art and music. Unfortunately, there was this one group of girls who liked to bully people like me. One day, in science class, I was carrying a project I was working on when those girls stopped me and tried to take my project. Just when I was about to cry and let them steal it from me, a girl appeared and told them to leave me alone, or else they would have to deal with her. When they saw her, they looked frightened and left in a hurry. I didn't know the girl, but when I turned to look at her, I saw that she was a tall brunette with a beautiful smile. She took my project and held it for me because I was shaking and sobbing. Then she walked me to class and told me she would be back during break to check on me. As she was leaving, she called back to me and shouted that her name was Matilda and said that she would see me later. She did indeed come back during break. The clique of bully girls left me alone after that and kept their distance from Matilda as well. I asked Matilda why they were so afraid of her. She laughed and said it was a long story, but the short version was that she beat them up once and they became afraid of her and stayed clear ever since. I asked her how she knew that those girls were always bothering me. She said it was pure coincidence, that she had happened to be in the classroom the day they tried to take my project from me. She said that I looked so helpless that she decided to step in. I asked her to be my friend. She teared up a little and said, "Of course," and from that day forward, we became the best of friends. I was cheerful every day now, and we grew closer and closer together. The happiest days of my life. Her story was unusual. Her dad was a boxer. Her parents split up because her mom couldn't stand the thought of him risking his life boxing every day, so she left. Her dad did his best to look after Maddie and her two little sisters. Then, one day, he was killed by thieves who robbed him as he was coming home from work, leaving Maddie to raise her siblings alone. This heavy responsibility matured her and toughened her character. She taught me to be bold, to love adventures. I feared nothing with her there. I dealt with situations decisively, without hesitation. We were like two separate halves of a ship sailing in the dark that happened to find each other one night and came together to complete each other. This was how I met Maddie, and our friendship grew stronger year after year. Maddie and her sisters were like my own sisters. We were all one big happy family, until something happened that disturbed the fabric of our universe. I enrolled in the College of Engineering, while she enrolled in a different college. The first year of college was difficult for me, because I missed Maddie so much. But then I tried really hard and focused on my studies. In my third year, I met Matthew, a player on the college basketball team. During that time, I was working for the college newspaper, and I was assigned to interview him. He was smart, handsome, and had an inspiring story. His parents died when he was young, leaving him responsible for his younger brother, so he decided to work and earn money while pursuing his dream of being a basketball player. By the time we met, He had a chance to play in the NBA. We had a connection, and he proposed to me. I wanted to tell Maddie so badly, to share this wonderful news with her, but I couldn't. Maddie had completely disappeared that year, and I hadn't seen her at all. I didn't know where she was or how to reach her. Then, one day, I got a call from her. Her voice sounded distressed, maybe because her responsibilities were such a burden on her. Either way, I was glad she called. She seemed sad, and I asked her what I could do to help. I told her that I wanted to see her, so we could catch up. She agreed, and told me that we needed to get together soon. When we finally met, I saw that she had lost a lot of weight. I asked her why, and she replied that she was working while going to college. She wasn't looking after herself at all, but her eyes told another story. I told her about Matthew, and that we were getting married soon. She smiled, but her joy seemed affected somehow. I didn't know how to describe it. Perhaps it was the disconnected look in her eyes. I wanted to introduce her to Matthew, but apparently they had already met. They spoke politely to each other, but there seemed to be something between them that made us all feel uncomfortable. I didn't know what it was. A while later, Matthew was always nervous about something. He always seemed to be busy with training or games. But was that all there was? At the same time, Maddie had started acting weird as well. Something was going on between them, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Whenever her phone rang, Maddie wouldn't answer, or even look to see who was calling. Shortly before my wedding, Maddie had disappeared again without notice. Matthew went back to his normal self, and everything seemed to be fine. The wedding ceremony was going beautifully, until we got to the part where the preacher said, "Anyone who saw a reason why this marriage should not take place, may they speak now or forever hold their peace." Well, it turned out that there was someone who saw a reason why this marriage should not take place, and that someone did speak up. And much to my amazement, it was Maddie. She shouted that Matthew was her fiancé, and that he had deceived her and left her for me. Matthew looked at her with a perplexed look on his face, as if this was news to him. I felt like time had shifted into slow motion. I had to be dreaming. I couldn't imagine why neither of them told me this before. I looked at Maddie and asked if it was true. She said, "I'm done lying to you. I don't want to act anymore. Meeting you has been the most horrible thing that has ever happened to me. My life was going well till I met you. You got everything you wanted, even Matthew. He chose you instead." I was staring, lost for words. Tears started running down my face. "Please leave," I said quietly. Maddie was crying too, yet she smiled and walked away. I didn't understand her behavior. Why did she smile as she walked out of my life? Days later, the answer revealed itself. Matthew and I knew each other well, and what happened at the wedding did not affect us at all. Still, I could see it in Matthew's eyes. He had something to tell me, and one day, he came inside the house with tears in his eyes. I asked what was wrong, if his family was okay. He nodded and said, "They're all fine, Sophie, but there's something I've been wanting to tell you." During those times, when Maddie disappeared without warning, it was because she kept a secret from you. She had a terminal disease. She was dying. I was shocked. He continued and said that she had arranged the scene at the wedding to make me hate her, so that when she died, I wouldn't feel grief or sorrow, that she had loved me so much. Soon after our wedding day, her disease took a turn for the worst, and she died. I was still standing in shock. He gave me the letter she wrote me. "Dear Sophie, I'm sure that up to this point in time, you didn't understand my strange behavior, my sudden change. It was necessary to protect you from the shock of my death. I had no choice but to make you hate me. Don't be upset with me, dear Sophie. These are the last moments in my life, and I just wanted to tell you that I love you. Forever friends, Matilda." I cried like I never did before. I had lost my best friend. Dear Maddie, now I know the reason for your tearful smile when you left the wedding that day. You are still my one true friend. Not a moment has passed without thinking of you. Forgive me for not being there when you needed me most. You will always be in my heart.